Good evening, everybody. We're going to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. This meeting is being video and audio recorded for future cable broadcast. Please silence all cell phones for the duration of the meeting, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this evening we have our public hearing on the 2024 fiscal year budget. So if I could please request a motion to open our public hearing on the school budget.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to the public. If anyone in the audience wishes to comment on the subject of the school budget, you would be welcome to make remarks. Does it look like we have anybody signed up to make remarks? No. Okay. So then we will proceed with our budget presentation. Dr. Bailey? Okay.
All right, so tonight we have the public hearing. Are you going to advance the slides? Okay. You'll see a lot of this is familiar from last month. But I think it's important to always go back to our mission and vision and our strategic objectives, because everything around the budget focuses and relates and is aligned to these things. So our mission of the Acushnet Public Schools, in partnership with staff, parents, and the community, is to promote student success, growth, and learning in a safe and supportive environment. And the vision is to be a high-performing school district where all students are afforded the opportunities to realize their potential. And our strategic objectives, which are symbolized by the pillars that you see there, and you'll see them throughout the presentation tonight, are achieving academic excellence for all students, creating thriving social and emotional learning experiences for all students, and strengthening partnerships with parents and the larger community. So the cost of running a school district is not like a typical business. There are fixed costs and mandated federal and state mandates by federal and the state. So for example, we have salaries. We have administrative contracts, which are fixed costs, locked in rates. We have high school tuition, and those rates are set by the state. We have contracts with the towns, and the enrollment is variable. In addition to salaries, we have technology, and those also are run through contracts. We want to continue maintaining a one-to-one district and continue a safe and strong infrastructure. Our curriculum, we've committed to high-rated curriculum, aligned curriculum, special education. Those are all federal and state mandates that we have to pay for. Operations and maintenance, those are the utility costs, oil and electric, and our service contracts, and then transportation. We're in the last year of a 3-year contract, and we're going to be going out to bid for that. So those are pretty much all the things that it takes to maintain level services, and there are a lot of fixed costs.
And just a reminder as well, though we are a school district, we don't get any, special treatment compared to other businesses. We still too have to deal with economical factors, inflation, unpredicted and unprecedented changes. Currently, we're dealing with, revenue projections that we just finally got the first round of figures the first week of March. We don't know where those are going to line as they work their way through government, but all of these things play into our business as well. Just because we have fixed costs doesn't mean that the prices of everything are going to stay, and we're going to get discounts, and we're going to secure the same grants that we do year in and year out. So we need to be respective of those economical factors as well. Just to paint a picture of the budget process for FY24. We started with a baseline budget, which again is beginning with the FY23 budget and ensuring that we are maintaining these same services leading into FY24. From the baseline budget, we solicited budget adjustments through central administration, leadership, and staff. And these are based on needs that are really driven by the data that we accumulate through the school year. From there, we forecast the revenues that are available. We put, our preliminary expenses compared to our revenues, and then we meet again with the leadership team in entirety and understand where we can gain efficiencies, make reductions or cuts, or where we need to increase services. From there, we get comfortable with departmental budgets that we finalize, and we take those budgets to the school committee budget subcommittee. We review our drafts, we have conversations, address questions, concerns, so on and so forth, and then we present the superintendent's budget to the school committee, which occurred last month. From there, we have our public hearing, which is where we are at currently, and then later tonight, we hope to adopt the school committee budget for FY24. After the budget is adopted, we would present to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Right now, we're looking at doing that next week on March 14th. And from there, our budget will go to the spring annual town meeting. So just to reiterate, we start with a baseline budget, and a baseline budget is really a fixed point in reference, which is the FY23 budget that's used for comparison purposes. From the baseline budget, we look at contractual obligations, which again, Dr. Billy alluded to, and salaries, special education, high school, tuition and transportation, which is variable based on enrollment, operations and maintenance service contracts, so that we can maintain our facilities and keep the lights on, and then fluctuations in alternative funding such as grants, circuit breaker, and special revenue accounts. Our baseline budget again began with our fiscal 23 budget, which was $15,669,570. We had adjustments in salaries of $161,000, adjustments in admin costs of $87,000, adjustments in instructional costs of $60,000, pupil services of $372,000, operations and maintenance of $221,000, community services of $6,000, and programs with other school districts, aka our high school costs of $531,000. So all those increases and decreases factor into our baseline budget that we built for FY24, and the end result is a baseline budget of $15,926,763, which year over year is a 1.64% increase. I do just want to clarify that the percent changes and dollar figure changes off to the, the percent changes off to the right vary based on reclassifications that we had to do in FY24's budget building to align with DESI account structure.
Okay, so as a team, we identified the needs for us to continue to succeed and grow. And as you know, we've been doing that each year. We've had a lot of success, as you know, with our recent ESEA national recognition at the elementary school. And that's the type of progress that we'd like to continue to see as we work on this budget together. So adjustments. As you know, since last month, and after many, many conversations with the budget subcommittee and the finance committee, we have made some adjustments to gain efficiencies in order to support these new adjustments, okay? So that first, that baseline budget that you see, that represents a $257,000 increase from 23 to 24. And the adjustments, we're only asking for just a little over $131,000 more. And then you see the bottom line is nearly 2.5% increase total. And just to get into this a little bit more, and I know we reviewed this last month, but we would like to we're proposing to keep a full-time reading interventionist at the middle school. This has been identified as a need, and as you know, with the pandemic, we've had an increased number of students who require intervention, and these are the kids that are not finding success in the regular classroom. instruction, so they do need intervention. So we'd like to continue, with this interventionist at the middle school.
And they're not on IEPs.
They're not, nope. The next slide you see, we obviously look at data to support this need, and you'll see that we have 245 students, or 62% of students, who are currently not meeting or partially meeting in the area of ELA. So this interventionist will focus on those needs, and obviously the goal is to move that needle from the 62%. And I'm sure that you remember a couple of months ago, we had a reading specialist presentation, and she really talked about how she's not able to see all of the kids in her schedule, and these are some of those kids that need to be serviced.
Another adjustment that we settled on was the district administrative assistant, and just to be clear, later on in the school committee meeting, we will have a presentation when we adopt or vote to adopt the budget that will detail how we came and settled in on these items. But at the end of the day, we looked back at data. A handful of years ago, there were actually 2 clerical staff in the main office for the district support. And right now, currently, our concern is that our jack of all trades that is in our business office right now is our payroll, our accounts receivable, our accounts payable, partial HR, so on and so forth, and that we really need someone in there to be cross-trained in case anything happens, and so that we have those tools, in capacity to build on our fundamentals in the business office. That will not only allow our district admin to free up time from their day-to-day minutia and focus on high-end tasks, but it'll help us, spend more time on what we were hired to do, and that's, shape the organization and prepare the school district for the future.
We also settled on middle school sports. As you know, we were able to run this program this year: cheerleading, basketball, volleyball, soccer, and flag football. And the middle school students are able to actually compete against other local middle schools. And it's free of charge for our students. And this is important because it does support the social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs of our students. And there's lots of important life lessons with sports, sportsmanship, how kids win and lose, teamwork, all essential life skills that the kids learn through this sports program.
So moving on to revenue sources for our budget. So our revenue sources consist of state aid, which is Chapter 70 funding, and required district contribution, which is also identified by the state. These preliminary governor's numbers came out last week, and if you focus on this column right here, FY24 preliminary governor's numbers, we're actually set to receive a little over $7 million in Chapter 70 aid. Our district is required to provide us about $8.7 million, which totals to $15.9 million, which when compared to expenses is about 99% of our budget. We are asking for another $146,000 in additional district contribution to balance our budget from the town, bringing us to a grand total revenue of $16,058,000, excuse me. Built into this too, just, is the amount of effort that we put in finding alternative funding sources, which include renting our facilities, our preschool program, our school nutrition program, the amount of effort that all of our admin and leadership team put into applying for grants and researching grants and obtaining grants. And that total number actually helps offset our budget by $1.1 million in asks that would essentially have to settle with the town if we didn't secure that funding. This slide is just an exhibit again of the breakout of revenues and expenses. It might be a little bit hard to read up on the big screen there, but if you have it in front of you, again, you can see the summary of our revenues and then the summary of our expenses, which offset and net each other out. But at the end of the day, our personnel expenses total about $9.8 million. Administrative expenses total about $212,000. Instructional expenses total $750,000. Pupil services, $1.1 million. Operations and maintenance, about $700,000. And community services, $50,000. Programs with other school districts also totals $3.4 million, and that is our high school costs. That brings us again down to a grand total of the $16 million asked for FY24. Again, same data, just a different view for this data. And this is by DESI object codes, the mandated chart of account structure that the state has us abide by. So no object codes is about 3.8 million. And that is, again, the makeup of our high school costs. We have professional salaries, clerical salaries, and other salaries, which are $8,600,000 and $1 million respectively. We have contracted services of about $2 million, again, all fixed costs because they are contracted. Supplies and materials of $645,000, other expenses of $349,000. Which brings us to an overall budget of $17 million, offset again by our alternative funding sources of $1,091,000, and we end up at our $16 million budget ask. Just to detail a little more what we're looking at here, between our high school tuition costs and our salary costs and our contracted services costs, again, arguably all fixed, that represents 94% of our budget. The other 6% makes up supplies and materials and other expenses, which again, you could argue are fixed, as our classrooms, will always need pencils, paper, crayons, instructionals, etc. And then finally, another exhibit just to look at our budget broken out by location. So the biggest piece of our budget, again, is our schools. Our high school costs represent 23% of our budget. FMS represents 25% of our budget, and AES represents 29% of our budget. All in all, between elementary to high school costs, that's 77% of our budget. When you factor in special education services that align with those student needs, you add another 15%, bringing our budget to 92%. Which leaves our district representation of our budget at an 8% allocation, which really is our technology infrastructure as well as our district administrative salaries.
Okay. So this budget took a lot of collaboration, a lot of hours. I want to thank Sarah Gomes and John Howcroft from the Budget Subcommittee. We've spent a lot of time together working on this line by line, so thank you. We're very comfortable with it, but we want to say publicly that it's a very tight budget. And this is a result of how we were being advised by the Finance Committee, as well as talking to town officials. But I do want to say that this entire budget aligns with our district strategy, all of our strategic objectives, and we're coming in at about at 1.64% baseline with a 0.8% adjustment for an overall increase of 2.48%, which is our bottom line. So it's tight, but we think we're comfortable with it to move forward.
And just from my perspective, day in and day out, we see the leadership team and the central admin team working together to build efficiencies for our budget and our expenses and really stretch the dollar and make the most of our money. And, working together, this is, has been my first 6 months here, but we already have made great progress towards, again, building efficiencies that will be reflective in our budget moving forward. And we're excited to do that, but it takes putting the right procedures in place, securing the right contracts, and entering into the right deals, in the preliminary stages, and then we'll reap the benefits of those moving forward. So with that said, again, here's just a refresher of our timeline. In February, we presented our original superintendent's recommended budget. We've left some time for the school committee to reflect on that budget presentation. Here we are presenting for the public hearing with minor adjustments from our original budget. Later on in the evening, we will again, recycle a similar presentation, going over a few more changes, where we will then vote to adopt the budget. And from there, we'll collaborate with the town and Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee when we meet on 3/14. And from there, our budget will go to spring annual town meeting in May.
Okay. So I want to thank everyone, and I want to encourage all of the community, the parents and everyone, to just get involved in the budget process and show your support at our town meeting, because really every single person in this town is a part of the process. So I appreciate all of the input that we've had from all the people who work in the school department, the school committee, and of course the community. And just that last quote, it's a quote that in one of my trainings, it just really resonated with me. Just because a need goes unfunded does not mean the need has gone away. So I will always advocate for what I believe the school department needs. But again, it's going to be a tight budget, but I believe we're in a comfortable place to move forward. And that is it for the public hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey, and Patrick, thank you for your presentations this evening. I just want to second what you said, Dr. Bailey, about having the support of the town. Town meeting is on May 22nd, so I really encourage all of you in the public, if you want to support the schools and the budget, please come that evening. We would really appreciate your support so that we can continue to move forward on the goals of the district. And as Dr. Bailey pointed out, it's a tight budget, but it's a budget that's put together responsibly while also addressing the needs of the school. And so I thank Mr. Howcroft and Mrs. Scopes for all your work in doing that. So if I could have a motion, please, to close our public hearing. So
To make
moved.
that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. And then we're going to call to order our regular school committee meeting. So if I could have a motion to open our regular school committee meeting.
I'll make a motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And the first thing on our agenda this evening is approval of minutes, payroll, and warrants. So if I could request a motion, please, of approval for the minutes of February 7th, 2023. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And second, the approval of payroll and warrants, please, if I could request a motion of approval.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And do we have anyone on delegation this evening for our regular meeting? We do not. Thank you. No old business, moving right into new. Back to you, Dr. Bailey.
Okay.
For your superintendent.
Okay, Madam Chairman, ask if we can take one thing out of order. I'd like to do the AES Highlight Media Center with Mrs. Ash. Would that be okay if we started with that?
That is fine.
All right, so I call Mrs. Ash up to the podium, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Good evening. I'm Diane Ash, and I took on the Librarian Media Center specialist job this past year, and I'm very eager and very honored to actually be part of this community. I was the librarian in New Jersey for just under 15 years, and also did classroom teaching, public school, private school, middle school, preschool, pretty much anything you name it, I've done it, but a majority of my time was spent in the library there and the media center. So we relocated up here to Massachusetts in January of 2020, and I started as a para, and then heard that the library was opening up and or was going to reopen, and I was glad to be able to use the things that I was using in New Jersey here, and then some. So that's kind of my introduction there. One of the things that I was curious about before I really kind of took on the position was how eager was the community going to be for a library again after it had been closed for a few years. And, you know, like I said, I was honored to be able to try to get that enthusiasm back, but I really didn't need to do anything because everybody was just jumping right on board and so excited. And in a way, I think that actually the fact that it was closed for a few years ended up being a positive because we were sort of forced to make some improvements that maybe we wouldn't have made otherwise, or it would have taken a little longer. So it's just a very exciting thing for me. Here's a quote that we worked on. At the moment that we persuade a child, any child, to cross that threshold, that magic threshold into a library, we change their lives forever for the better. And these are the two of the standards that show alignment to the district plan, establishing a consistent model of instruction across classrooms and grade levels that engages students in higher order thinking and empowers students to be lifelong learners. That's kind of what we go back to a lot, is the empowering students to be lifelong learners across the board, not just with the library, obviously. And then the prioritizing community partnerships that support the aligned goals of academic excellence and social emotional learning. So here are some before pictures. The top left is the before it kind of got cleaned out and painted and recarpeted. You can see the sort of dingy carpet, gray walls, and then it was sort of used as a dumping grounds for, you know, well, where are we going to put this? Let's put this in the library. And so we had some cleaning out to do there. And then we obviously got the new carpet, new walls, the touch view screen you see on the back there, and then some furniture. We'll go into some of that on some next slides here. So the layout is just a very open plan. We had to take out a lot of tables. Originally, the actual computer center was there, so there were many tables with computers on. So when they were taken out, because we got the Chromebooks, that opened up a lot. So that gave us some more space for some of the reading nooks. And then we rearranged. If I can go back, let me see. I don't know if you can really tell there. So all that area on the horizontal picture there is maybe one more table in there, but that was really filled with more shelves and just sort of extra things. So it's opened up nicely now. And then there's new signage, and we implemented the management system with Follett, which is the Destiny Discover, and there are nice little little cushions, and there's a nice sofa in there, and obviously we're getting new books, which is huge. I mean, that's 90% of what's improving. And then the kids bring in their Chromebooks for things like doing their AR tests, and I don't use technology with them on a daily basis unless it's just a touch view. I don't have them sitting on their Chromebooks and doing very much unless maybe we're doing an author study or something. So I try to focus on the books. I actually teach just one grade level, which is grade 4, which is a wonderful level to start with. The standards are with the Massachusetts School Library Association, that's the MSLA, and I've had to get to know that, but it's very similar across the board as far as most standards in most states. So it's just different numbers on the standards. And then I take grades K through 3, come in for a regular time to just take out books. And then I offer like sort of a open door policy, I'll say, where if somebody gets done with the book, so maybe they don't come for 2 weeks, but if they get done with the book, they can come in before school or after school or even during their lunch, on their way to lunch, different times. I kind of just let them do that because I want to just encourage them to have new books in their hands. So, and then teacher collaboration. I'm always, like I said, open doors, so I can come in and get books that will support their curriculum, maybe holiday books, and so I take some of their input also for some of the purchases of books that maybe they need that we don't have. These are some of the things that we're doing for literacy promotion, some of the social media programs. They bought birthday books last year with Scholastic money from the book fair last year, so every student gets a book during lunch for their birthday that was bought out of those profits. And then there are some displays that have teachers' favorite books in the hallways, and that just helps kids to see that teachers like to read too. And we have our accelerator reader with one of the fourth grade classes. I have a specific class that I've zeroed in on, and they have I call them goal strips, where when they reach certain points on their AR goal, they can receive prizes, and then they can choose snacks at the end. And so we just try and do a little bit of some encouraging for that. And there's another kind of a homeschool connection, which is called Guess Who's Reading, and that the kids will send in pictures of themselves, very similar to #Read Like a Wildcat, but they'll send in pictures of themselves reading at home or in a tree house or under their bed or on their porch, and there's a book covering their face, and then I put them in the hallway and I give them a couple days, and the kids have to guess who it is, and then I put the answer out there, and they kind of like seeing, just seeing each other in different environments. We just had a week ago our, I don't know if any of you were able to make it, but we had our after-school book fair literacy night, and it was a huge, huge success. We had over $14,000 of sales, and of course we get a lot of profits for that from free books and whatever else we decided we won't use the money for, but I pulled some books from the library. So that is our total sales, and then it's broken down into different percentages depending on if you take books or if you take cash profits. So that was wonderful, and the parents were just so amazing. They were lined up out the door. They stood in line with their strollers. No one complained, and it was just like it just felt like it was a real, everybody wanted to come and just see the library and be a part of the library, and it was a real nice, invigorating thing. We also have teacher volunteers that help with things like putting barcode labels. All the older books, since we're putting them in the system, they need to get barcode labels, so I have teachers come in and they put labels on, and then those labels need to get scanned and put into the system for every single title. So it's a long process. And then I have some students that help with things like shelving books, and I also do some collaborating with Dina St. Pierre at the Acushnet Public Library. So we've talked about a lot of things together. We discuss books that the kids are reading. Do you have this? And I might have it, she might not. We just discuss what's popular with them. She helped me a little bit with arrangement of books, and she was there for the literacy night. She's come in for trying to promote people getting their library cards. So I work with her a lot. I love her. And then we've had the literacy night. We're going to have a kindergarten information night. Something in the future will be a preschool story time, so we can get some of the young parents to come in and see the library, and it's just a nice thing. I know as a parent I used to like to do that, take my children to the library when they were 3-4 years old. And that's about it. Anybody have any questions about anything? Anything that you're not sure what's happening over there? Come over and see it. I can answer questions over there too.
How do you select the books?
So I use a lot of different sources. I use Dina St. Pierre a lot at the public library, and I actually do go through individual titles. So I might ask the students, I want the students to sort of have a part in building the library. So I will talk to them about what books they like, and then I just write them down sometimes and have them, I will go back and research them. Some of them I know about myself just from having library, running a library before. I did work at a Christian school, so we were very conservative with what we had in the library, so I'm coming in with that mindset. But I make sure that we have relevant titles also. And I just do a lot of research, Goodreads, Common Sense Media. There are some great sites out there that will, tell you age-appropriate things, and I read parent reviews to see what things they, within those same sites. It's kind of case by case as far as how I research it, but I do have Goodreads I use a lot, and Common Sense Media.
As a parent, I would be concerned about what kind of books are in
Of course.
the elementary school.
Yeah, of course. So for example, this Scholastic Book Fair we had, I asked them not to have any middle school books. They did send some. I did not put them out. So I had boxes of books that they brought in, and I took one look at it. I see some in here because I know it's middle school, but I looked at the image on the front page, and I said, well, I don't even have to open the book. I'm looking at the image, and I don't want kindergarten kids seeing that. So as a mom, I understand, and content, the graphic novels, I have to watch those sometimes because they tend to have a little bit more advanced. It just depends. Graphic novels can be like Pizza and Taco, which are great for first grade. And then there are some other ones that I want to make sure there's nothing violent. And that's why I do the Goodreads and the Common Sense Media.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mrs. Ash, I really appreciate, I'm sorry.
No, I just had a comment,
Okay.
and the comment is really, I hope that no future school committees need to have a discussion about reopening the library again. I just think that we've got a great library in town, but I think we'd all be shocked by how many people have never been there, or how many kids have never been there. And I just think that it's an expected, I'll call it an amenity that everybody would expect within, the school, the access to it for the kids. So again, I hope that we don't see any more pictures of the library being used as storage in the future.
I agree. It's really become the heart of the school, and I know that when I walk into Mrs. Ash's library, Media Center, the kids are always so excited, so full of joy. They're excited about the books. Every single time I walk in there, it's just pure happiness. And isn't that what this is about, is really teaching the kids the love of reading at such a young age, and to foster that. But I greatly appreciate your time and everything you've done to reopen that library and the work that you've put in, because I know it's been a lot of work. I know you spent some time in the summer with us to get that library up and running, and I appreciate the support of the administrators at the elementary school to get that going, because it was not easy. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, and it's a great, it's been a lot of improvements, and the kids are very, very eager, and the parents are eager. So I think it'll continue to be more of a community place as we maybe bring the preschool parents in, and people start using it more. Yeah.
I also love the collaboration between us and the town library. It's so good. So I appreciate her, Mrs. St. Pierre, very much as well.
Yeah, one quote that I had written down that I'll mention in closing was by someone named David Lanks. I'm not sure if he was an author, I don't know of him. It says, "Bad libraries build collections, good libraries build services, great libraries build community." I thought that was a nice fitting one to end with.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
No,
right.
excellent job.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to go over the personnel report. And that's a quick one. We have one new staff member and one resignation, and I had mentioned that last month, and I had mentioned that it would be on this month's report, and that is it. Any questions on that?
Excuse me, what was the position? Oh, I didn't open it up, I just...
Oh.
So there's.
Okay. I just...
What's that? Next, we have our school district calendar for the 23-24 school year. This has been vetted out through the leadership team, and we would like it to go up for a vote if there were no issues with it tonight, so that we can start posting it. I know many families like to plan around this calendar. as we.
Dr. Bailey, do we
Is there
have
a
that?
copy? Yeah.
I don't know where it is either.
Give me 1 second here.
Okay.
It was there early.
I'm sorry, they're early.
Is it?
Let's come back to that while she works on that.
Move forward in the,
And at this time, I'd like to call Mr. Missler to the podium to give us a technology update this month.
Good evening, Madam Chair, School Committee, Dr. Bailey. Excuse me. Quick updates. The first one is inventory. When I first took the position, I talked about having inventory for you guys and a 10-year plan at the end of this year. This kind of just showcases what we've been doing. Over the break, Tech Department was on ladders, on tables, everywhere we were, inventorying what we can find in this district. We're pretty darn close to being done already, and our goal is to have that to you in May. For some fun, we've been working with the amazing AES admin team, the whole pupil service team, Kathleen Boren, and we're working on the kindergarten registration. So part of technology's role is to kind of help with processes, make things more efficient, and kind of fix things that are in place that may need a second set of eyes on. So that's kind of what we've been working on. Aspen procedures, I've hit this a few times with you guys. I just want to go over a little bit with Kathleen. Kathleen's been going over a lot of stuff that we've had in this district that simply was kind of piecemealed together either by not having an understanding of systems, not having the training for systems, or just having too much work on their plate. So our goal now is to go a little bit slow to go fast. So her task is to work with Desi, Aspen, our school admin. She creates how-tos. You guys will hear that a lot from me. We even put in our s'more newsletters that go out to parents. But some of the fun, just to give you a little bit of the issues that we run into, is Aspen will tell you one way, another person Aspen will tell you a different way, Desi will tell you a third way. And all of them could be wrong. So at the end of the day, it's a lot of figuring it out and then putting a procedure in so that way 10 years from now, whoever comes into this position knows how we've been doing it, and they can then either make tweaks to make it more efficient, adjust the flow, but at least it's all kind of there in a guideline. Camera systems. Our camera systems actually haven't been the best. We really jumped into those after we've had some infrastructure issues at the AES. One thing I wanted to showcase on this was we're now no longer a district that reaches out for help. So we're not reaching out for any kind of vendors to come in here and assist us. We're not doing any kind of outside sourcing. So all of our technicians in-house are hungry, they're competent, they're up on ladders, as I mentioned, but everyone's doing it in-house to save the district some money, and it's kind of like we were talking about as the admin staff and team. We're trying to find any ways we can to kind of save money as a district, because at the end of the day, the more money we have to put in this district means more, I'll just be a little selfish on the tech side, more money we can put towards tech, right? So I just wanted to say kudos to all of them, because literally all three of them have been doing a fantastic job. E-rate update. I delved into this a little bit because part of this ties onto some things we've been asking for, infrastructure, phones, you name it. So E-rate update, I mentioned this a few meetings ago, but I wanted to go a little bit further into it. So for E-rate, for those that you do not know, E-rate is a fund that provides telecommunications, internet access, and infrastructure at a discounted rate based on our free and reduced lunch counts. So talking about data, that's why we need to make sure we get every free and reduced lunch kid, because it gives us a better rate. This year's E-rate allotment is $160,988. That means the E-rate will pay 60% of our submission up to the award amount of $160,988. So looking at past data from 2016, which is all I can go back to, that's all they have for historic data, Acushnet has really only submitted for internet only. That's $24,000 annually that we've only submitted for. So we only get 60% of that. Moving forward, and including this year, as long as everything goes forward, we're going to max our allotment. So our goal in the tech department and for years forward is to make sure that we make that a giant prioritization and target that from here on out. And that's everything. So some things it doesn't target, but that targets your servers, your access points, your internet, any kind of wiring, cabling in the district, and then a few other one-offs here and there. So it's a pretty big thing for us, and I just wanted to say that to this group, because again, as we go back to the table, and I got to thank the whole admin team, because we spent a lot of time looking at budgets, trying to find ways that we can save money here and there, grants, you name it. This is one of the ones that I think we can continue to do year over year that'll make a big impact for this town. And that's it.
Where's that money come from? E-rate?
So E-rate's it's a state-run fund. And back in the day, it was actually just for telco, so just telecommunications, just your phones. And then it's kind of blown up a little bit, so now it's just more of your internet providing, anything that gets a kiddo out to the internet, out to the web for education.
So that 160,000 is based on our school lunch program data?
No, basically what that 16988 is what this, what us as a Acushnet have the ability to get, because they break down the giant pie, and that's one of the allotment based on our amount of students that we have in the district. So another town over will get something similar, your bigger towns will get more.
And you can submit 60% of that amount?
I can submit way more than that, but we get 60% of it, and that 60% goes to 16988. So we can get 16988 back. We would essentially pay 40% more than 16988, if that number makes sense to you guys? Okay. If I had a whiteboard, I could really go crazy.
Question, I didn't see the updated phone system in the budget proposal in a public meeting. Is that still something that we're looking to do, or, okay?
We are going to talk about it during our budget.
Okay, fair, thank you.
Alternative
But
path.
is that something that could be applied to the E-rate?
Some parts of it, yes. The hard part is with the infrastructure alone, we're touching that number, the 16988.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, gotcha.
Broken up into other sections, but we'll go with that.
Thank you.
Is there any questions, everybody?
Registration is like the bane of every parent's existence, especially with multiple children in the school system. Do you think by next year, we'll be able to just fill out one form and not use paper anymore? I'm just throwing it.
I think that's a perfect goal, and I think we shoot for it. I can't say yes or no, but we'll definitely work that way.
Don't look at me.
We'll be as efficient as possible as we can. We'll do something. We'll continue to tweak it. I think that's kind of the beauty of this year. I can speak for myself more than anybody else. It's kind of, once we got our feet wet, my goal, I love efficiency. I'm a past programmer, so everything I do is always how can I make it a little bit better, cleaner. So next year, it's just going to be a little bit more of a tweak, and I guarantee you things will just get easier as we move forward.
Yeah, Patrick, one of the things that I think I brought up maybe 3 years ago was the onboarding of brand-new students and kindergarten students in particular, like not know, okay, oh crap, what do I do? I got a 5-year-old, like what do I do? The ease of that process might be a good focus. Is there anything that you're working on there?
Yeah, that's what we're working on now. The AES admin actually have a presentation. They have a parent night to come in.
I'm joining
Jump on in.
Patrick, because we meet weekly, and this has been the topic.
Yeah,
We are
please.
going to have an information night on March 28th. We already have stuff on our electronic sign.
It's on our side.
We have been looking at efficiencies with the registration process to do it online, so that's evolving. We meet weekly at my department in tech. And as far as onboarding, we're having orientations and those type of things. I'm not sure when you say onboarding, John, exactly.
Well, there's a process. I mean, you have to prove residency, so there's, you know, we have to upload a water bill, cable bill, something like that, a couple forms of, you know, identification. I mean, that process is pretty clunky. I think you're probably getting people coming in without those things, sending them back out, and coming back in, paper copies. And I also recall filling out a form. I thought I was done. I filled out the exact same form again, and then I did it again, and then again with orientation.
Your kids were here long before me, so.
So, no, but I think, you know, I think that's probably pretty similar to the process today.
Well, electronic is a
different
little,
now.
it's much more
Yeah, it's
efficient.
much more efficient.
I can tell you, you brought up residency. Residency is a huge issue in this district right now. We are investigating a lot of residency issues, and we're not getting good documentation. So the reason that we ask for the documents that we do is to ensure that people registering students in our district actually live here. 2 years ago, we had 26 students illegally using addresses in our district, and that was during COVID. So I tell parents, it is a big deal because 26 of our Acushnet kids could not come to school because somebody else was sitting in that seat during COVID. So it's a huge concern. My office is working on residency pretty much every
Not to
day.
mention what it does to kids.
Right.
You know, we're teaching kids to lie about their address, and then they have to be uprooted in the middle of the school year and go to their neighborhood school. Like, it's a little traumatic for kids.
And cost, I know our town has to pay for high school.
Right.
So when we look at the number of high school students that may be using, you know, false information, that's 10,000 plus per student times 4 years. So,
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate the
Ms.
update.
Betancourt and Mr. Misser. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Have a good night.
I do believe the calendar is in
I was just
your
about that.
Is it
packet
really?
at the moment.
I see it.
Yes. In the superintendent's folder. Madam Chair, would it be okay if I gave everyone 3 minutes to look this calendar over while I
Yes,
just
please.
snuck out?
That would be great.
Break.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see that.
It's in the thing now. It should be.
Keep in mind our parents, like, you know, how many days off they're getting at any one month in time. You know, we try to spread it out so it's not, you know, 3 days off in 1 week kind of a thing.
But like, in just this week is a good example where we have a half day on Thursday. Fairhaven has a half day on Friday. So
That's 2 days taken
Again.
off this week.
we won't be able to control everything.
Right,
But
right.
I think if we can wait a month just to see,
We can certainly do that.
is everybody okay with that?
This draft goes
Madam Chair,
August
I have one-
30th through June.
Are we done with that issue? Because I got
Is
an issue, you know, with the calendar.
You have an
Yes.
issue with the calendar?
Yes.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead.
This is referring to having school in the last week in August, where the hottest days of the year are usually in that week. We do not have air conditioning in the schools. I don't know, you know, this is something that,
Talk about this.
how much of the temperature we have in the classrooms at that time. I do know that there's research showing the correlation between temperature and learning. The higher the temperature, the less learning goes on. And are we really, unless there's, I would hope maybe give assignment to the superintendent to research that fact to see what, you know, how it fits as far as that last week in August. That, are we, and the question I have, are we really squandering our resources by having less effective learning due to temperature, with a high temperature, or whether we go back to the traditional of after Labor Day that school starts?
I can address that. I can tell you that right now it's a school committee policy, and
I know,
we try to fit in, we have to fit in 180 days, and then we have to add 5 additional days for snow emergencies, et cetera, school closures. So we cannot go past the end of June. So you can see, like, just by doing it a week ahead of time, with the 5 additional days of 185 days, let's say we have to go there, that already brings us down to June 21st. And that's just, I know a lot of school districts do that now, and, you know, the students don't go the entire week, that last week of August. It's training days for the staff, and then it's a shorter week for the students to get them acclimated back to the school day. I would still recommend doing that. I think in New England, we're gonna get hot days in September. We do monitor our classrooms for temperature. Everything is hooked up to computers, so we actually know the temperature, whether it's cold, hot, anything that gets too hot or too cold, we would relocate classrooms. We've done it before. It's very rare. But once in a while, we do have situations where classrooms get warm or cold, and we monitor that constantly. So it's really hard to say that it would be the last week in August versus the third week in September, because I think with global warming and everything else, our weather lately is you can go to the beach one day and wear a winter coat the next day. Unfortunately, you know, it's just the way of our environment right now.
You know, I'd like to open the discussion and probably talk, you know, when you have, you know, have staff meetings, talk with the staff to see how they judge, you know, the learning in those hot days of the last week in August, whether there's effective teaching going on. Even though they want to, it's just that the youngsters are not capable because of temperature. You know, and and whether we should be looking at changes the April vacation or the February vacation where learning is really an optimum type of, due to temperature. You know, we have to go on, you know, with climate change and how it's affecting everything in our lives. Whether we just have to keep updating, our research so we can apply our resources in a more effective way. And secondly of all, we all know that the last week in August is the highest of the hurricane season. So we're going to be looking forward to, not looking forward to it, but expecting that we're going to have more frequent hurricanes and more severity. And that last week in August is usually whether we should try to use our time when there's less turbulence, which affects our learning process. So I just want to toss that idea out, for discussion and research. So I share your goals as far as increasing MCAS scores. I don't want to be squandering any resources towards that goal. So I was just raising that point.
I'll definitely take my direction from the committee, so I'm not sure if others want to weigh in on that.
So, John, I bring this up every year. Why did we ever change school starting? It was always the first Wednesday after Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
Always. Up until my daughter went to school, 10 years ago. It stopped 10 years ago, magically. And it started to be the first week of August, and New Bedford started it, Dartmouth, everybody now in our area starts the week prior now. Nobody's been able to tell me why it
Well,
really
I
is.
think to your point, it has to do with the 180 days that are required, right? Plus your snow days, and then you're getting into contract negotiations,
That's
right?
what it's for. It's
It's
contractual.
what has been negotiated, part of our contracts of what.
The
so-
teachers' unions
So it's
probably
not
didn't want
as
to go with
easy
the
to
job.
undo. I mean,
Yeah.
it's certainly something we can continue to talk about as a district and take that into future negotiation processes, but it's not something you can just, I think when
No,
you do
yeah,
the
you
numbers, you
can't.
can't just change it. Am I right on that?
It's very tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
No,
tricky
Um,
to put this together.
And all the districts had to get together 10 plus years ago to sort of agree to this because the teachers' unions all had to get together and they probably, and some parents probably also didn't want to go into July.
And
right?
I don't know what the weather average temperatures are in like, I don't know
Well, they're
that it's,
hotter
that
than
it's,
last
maybe the data does back it up, that it's that much hotter the last week of August than it potentially
Yes,
could be the
it-
first week of September.
But I'd like to see some research where,
Yeah.
brought forth to a committee when we're planning calendars.
I
We
agree.
shouldn't be doing it really at the convenience of others rather than the goal that we have as school committee members as far as, the maximum use of our resources for the maximum learning. Whether it's, some people like a vacation in February, or we put it in a teacher's contract so, they can have a break. That's not the goal of public education. The public education is, have performance by our students and whether every day counts. So I just want to toss
No,
that out.
I think it's something we
whether
should continue
the
to
committee,
explore.
choice committee, want to send it back for the superintendent to do some research and come back next time and say, look, I can't do it, but I'm looking at the research for future use. But I think we've got to go down that road sooner or later.
Well, I think what we can do is look at what is I mean, I think we've done this before, but, I mean, it would be helpful to understand, like, outside of the 180 days and what you've talked about, Dr. Bailey, with the weather, days that you're building in. I know there's requirements around professional development days, how many of those you've got to get in, so like, it would be helpful to understand, like, how much flexibility do we even have within this calendar?
So there's 3 full PD days built into this calendar and 5 half-days, and that's part of the teacher's contract. And you'll see like those days are shaded or slashed out.
Plus the orientation day.
Plus the orientation day.
Right. So what's in there already is aligning with
So-
what is in contract. and
Right, if you look at the
negotiations.
first week, just to review that, on Monday, August 28th, the staff report for orientation. On Tuesday, there's no school for students again because the staff are there for professional development. The students will begin grades 1 through 8 on the Wednesday. They come to school Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then Monday is a holiday. So again, kids are getting reacclimated back to school, getting introduced to things. I've not heard anything negative from staff about this. I think the goal is to try to, it gets warm too at the end of June. I mean, it just, you don't know which way it's gonna go.
I think the parents' rationale for me, and I'm just talking personally, the beginning of school, at least the first week, is basically for the kids to reacclimate themselves, say hi to their friends that they haven't seen. Nothing's really going to sink in, whether it's 100 degrees in that classroom or 50 degrees or 75 degrees in that classroom. And so that's why I've always been okay and hasn't really pushed.
I
for
will
that.
tell you though, I mean, I walk around on the first days of school and it's very productive.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
very
You know, those are
productive.
things that, there's tension being made to this issue and continues. It should be an ongoing dynamic process. That's what I'm trying to drive out because,
4 days. It's 5 days, it's a week, so.
I think Mr. Outcross trying to get us to 160 days a year. Calendar.
well,
Either that or he's trying to add AC units to our.
Right, yeah.
I would think that
I've already
is
looked into that.
I've always advocated for that, as you all know, for
I would
years.
love to see
Yeah.
I
AC
hope
in
the day will
school.
come when we will need, not it is a luxury. You know, when we're planning the school and we're talking about, I was advocating air conditioning at that time. And people, and some individuals were saying, it's just a luxury and why should, even though they were sitting in themselves in an air-conditioned office, they in turn were having youngsters, in an air-conditioned rooms. The day, it must come shortly when we do have, whether we seek federal grants under climate change issues, and that would be the priority.
And we also, just to remind folks, we also have to take into account our summer school programming. So we have to get in so many days of summer school per the IEPs and also our summer cleaning. But we do have children in our buildings during the summertime. We do have some locations that have AC. And again, we're constantly monitoring the temperature and making sure that kids are in a good place as far as the environment.
So can we, so that we can move on to other items in the agenda, are we agreeing today that first we're going to hold off on a vote so we can better align with surrounding districts? Take the vote next month. Hopefully by then we'll have a better sense.
Sure.
Yes, that works for everybody? Yeah, okay. And I think,
Re-examine that issue.
yeah, I mean, I think, I don't see an area in this school budget where we can move, but certainly I think if there were, we would entertain it.
A lot of things have been happening lately, a lot of good things, anything can be accomplished.
I like your optimism, Mr.
Yes.
Howard.
I thought
I'm very
I heard him
optimistic.
advocating for no February vacation, so he should be careful.
But I would, if research shows that we have better education as far as outcome by negating the February vacation, in place of if days in late August are ineffective, then it's a no-brainer that we go down that road. I'm sorry.
All right, so we're gonna,
So can
do I have to
we,
take a vote to hold off?
to
on the-
table? That's what I was just.
All right, so if I could request a motion to table the vote for the school year 23-24 district calendar until our next school committee meeting in April.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the last thing that I have is the superintendent's FY '24 budget, which we're asking for a vote tonight.
Okay.
And it's not to be redundant with all the things that you've heard last month and even tonight, so we will try to summarize
Okay.
and point out anything new, because there is some new information in this particular presentation. So Mr. McIntyre.
All right, so just to reiterate what Dr. Bailey said, there are some redundancies in this presentation. We're going to try to skim over the data because this will be the third time you've heard it between the last month, the public hearing, and now, but please feel free to interrupt at this point if you have any specific questions on any slides that we cover. So without further ado, I will turn this on and we'll get going. Here we go. All right, so again, mission, vision, and strategic objectives have not changed since earlier this evening. And our budget, everything in our budget strongly supports our strategic objectives. The cost of running the school district, again, it's just maintaining level services. We need to keep up with our level services in order to succeed and to strengthen, our student education. What we did last year is important that we stay consistent in what we can do in future years and build on that as stepping stones.
Well, I can't find it. Can you find it? Where is this?
So I went into superintendent's report this time. This is what I was looking at before.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Just make sure I'm on the same page.
Yeah.
Does everybody have it under the superintendent's report?
Yeah.
Which one?
It,
Yeah, it just doesn't have those.
Oh, it doesn't have that.
No, you're looking at the public hearing version. There
yeah,
are two versions.
APS FY 2024.
So if you go into the superintendent's
Yep.
report.
It's there, there's a bunch of pie charts.
I think that's it.
Some red line.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have that one.
Yeah.
You
it's
should,
not-
I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the same one you guys are looking at.
Yeah,
Oh, wait,
we have it.
It's,
I hit the wrong button. You have to hit the down button and it showed.
Yeah.
We can turn,
Go
but we are not
sideways, it
so
goes to the
fast.
other.
Yeah, if you go sideways, it won't go.
You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it?
Thank you, sorry. Sorry.
No worries. All right, so to continue on, again, we need to maintain level services, and a lot of our costs are fixed, again, salaries, technology, curriculum, special education, facility costs such as utilities, and transportation costs, as well as high school tuition. Continuing through, again, we worked our butt off to build a strong baseline budget, and we're actually in pretty good shape, as that alludes to, since, our increase in our baseline budget, as we stated earlier, was only 1.64%. So that means we did have a good, strong foundation to build off of and carry those expenses forward with minimal increase.
Okay. So since we met last month, we've had quite a few discussions with our budget subcommittee, with the finance committee, with our town administrator, and the town accountant. And through all that, we made more reductions. So to the tune of $268,000, which we're going to really cover in the next few slides of what that looks like.
Can I just jump in, just say?
Yeah.
That when we initially brought this budget last month in there, John and I said that we weren't done yet. Like, we were still working on things, and that's what we've been doing. We've had maybe 5 meetings since then to try to just make sure things made sense, that we could honestly say, this is the best that we can do with our goals and with the services and things that we need.
And
Okay.
Paula, as you go through this, you're gonna, I presume, cover like why we prioritize what we did versus the things that we took out since the last budget. Okay.
All right, and just before I continue, so those cuts of 260, or reductions of $268,000 are a factor of reductions to our baseline budget as well as reductions to the new adjustments that we had asked for. So it'll be two figures broken up that total are $268,000.
Okay, so of the $268,000 that we just alluded to, that's a total of $59,000 reduced from the baseline budget. And I want to talk about what those things are, the reductions. Contracted services, we consolidated licenses. We reduced the number of assemblies at our schools in hopes that maybe the PTO will help cover some of those costs. We came up with a more efficient schedule, or we're going to work towards a more efficient schedule for bus transportation. Supplies and materials, recess materials, we're going to share materials with PE. You'll see there's something under curriculum, that's our science curriculum. We have a highly qualified, aligned, potential free curriculum that we're looking to get a grant right now, which will help cut our Science Amplify curriculum. So again, I think that pretty much covers that.
Yep, so again, it's not that we're reducing services, it's just we're gaining efficiencies, we're coming up with more creative ways to provide the same services in a different fashion that we're comfortable with. We better align professional development to an actual figure of where our teachers utilize it. Combine that with the tuition that we offer in their contracts. We're satisfied with how much we offer for their professional development and continuing education. Again, supplies and materials, just as we kind of adapt new technology and go and transition into technology in the classroom more and more year after year, it reduces classroom supplies. Our gymnasiums have solid equipment that they use for PE that we can utilize for recess and reduce those costs as long as we coordinate and schedule accordingly. So those are the ideas of the baseline budget cuts that we made since the last presentation meeting. Again, it's not that we're reducing or limiting services, it's just we're gaining efficiencies really to the tune of $60,000. So that being said, our baseline budget, again, as you saw earlier, starts at the same beginning. Fiscal 23's budget of $15.6 million. With those new efficiencies gained and other contractual obligations and fixed costs, our level service budget ends at $15.9 million, or a 1.64% increase. From there, we, again, discussed adjustments that are identified unfunded needs that we need in order to continue improving our school district. And with that, I will show you the original adjustments that we had.
Yep, so this is what we originally started with. This is the slide that you saw last month. And obviously through collaboration, a lot of collaboration, we realized that we needed to revisit and make further adjustments. So you can see what we started as level service was bare minimum. You see the new unfunded asks, which is 2.17, and then an overall ask of 4.19, and that was all original, and you'll see those numbers will change.
So as Dr. Bailey identified, significant collaboration took place to get to this point in time. That's with our budget subcommittee, with the finance committee, the town, just conversations in passing with the town offices and town representatives, and just understanding the fiscal health of Acushnet as a whole and other departments too, while still looking out for ourselves. So what that resulted in is our original adjustments were slashed, and that doesn't mean that they're not going to be addressed, or we're not going to, find ways to implement them in the budget moving forward. But at this time, we don't have them built into local. So, for instance, one of the interventionists we have slashed. We have slashed an additional school bus, and we have slashed the ask for the new phone system. I'm going to go over the numbers, and then we'll go back to each individual item. So, our original 2.02% increase in our baseline budget was reduced to a 1.64% increase. Our adjustments of 2.17% in our original asks were reduced to a 0.84% increase, and then our overall budget was reduced from a 4.19% increase to a 2.48% increase. And again, all of this came in conversation with the different groups I identified, central leadership, and our leadership team. And the idea is here that an interventionist, you know, we're going to get creative. We're going to find a way to utilize staff at our elementary school and address the intervention needs. The needs did not go away, but you know, Dr. Bailey's favorite saying, 2 schools, 1 district. We're going to work closely together with the 2 schools to see if we can pivot an interventionist over to the middle school to address the math intervention needs that we have.
I just want to jump in on that because that was a big concern of mine, having those extra people. So based on this budget, we are trying this, and I want that for the record. We are going to try this because it makes sense to try first. And if it doesn't work out, then next year, if it is needed with the data that we get, then we will ask for an additional position. Do you know what I mean?
And
Do you follow
again,
what I mean?
Yeah,
everything
So it's
is
worth
very
trying
data
first.
focused.
well taken.
Yeah, everything that we're doing, we'll support it with data.
Just-
But we are living that model, 2 schools, 1 district. Why not? We're 2 schools on 1 campus, we work together, and we have the means to be able to get creative in our operations, and we believe that we're going to be able to do that. So it's something we'd like to try.
I have one question. On the governor's budget, were the projections for transportation increased?
So transportation reimbursement increased, but that doesn't apply to our district. It's regional school transportation reimbursement.
Okay, because I remember reading that in the...
Yeah, so that really doesn't impact us.
So I guess I would just ask, I understand we're going to try to solve the problem right through a creative method, but we prioritize the district administrative assistant potentially over the math and science. I just like to hear you talk about.
And that was my point of, we're gonna add another admin and forget about our kids, like, right? That's
Yeah,
the
so-
parent's
And I'm
attitude.
just asking.
And it's not
So
an
again,
admin, it's an administrative assistant.
Right.
But every support person at the central office impacts the teachers who impact the students. And if we can't pay our teachers, we're gonna have a big problem. We used to have 2 people in that business office, we're down to 1. And it's a struggle. And if this person is ever absent, I can honestly tell you there's not 1 person in the district who will get payroll done or pay the bills.
So just to that matter, the decision of removing that other person was when I was on the budget committee, and we were told as a school committee that let's try it, let's see what happens. And now after multiple years, it's just not working.
And I
So
want to be
in
clear,
that
I
regard.
am not saying a district administrative assistant isn't important, that it doesn't impact ultimately the kids. I just wanted to ask the question and
Yep.
understand
Yeah.
why.
It's a great question.
And the messaging really isn't, it's one or the other. It's both.
Yes.
Just because it's crossed out on the screen does not mean that we're addressing the need. We're going to have both, again, just not in the budget, if that makes sense. We're borrowing from the elementary school, from the resources that already exist to address the need. We can't necessarily do that with an administrative assistant because of confidentiality issues, legal jargon, things like that, that we can't have, you know, a main office staff floating around with that information and still doing their duty, you know, 50% of the time, 75% of the time. But we do have the resources right now to pivot an interventionist to address our intervention needs.
So the idea is you're taking the math interventionist that's in the middle school currently.
We're taking an interventionist. Currently, the elementary school has 5 interventionists. Some are paid out of the local budget, some are paid out of grants. We're going to take 1 position, move it over to the middle school to give Ford Middle School
Thank you for
2
clarifying that.
interventionists.
Okay.
They're going from 0 interventionists to 2. And again, we've put a lot of effort into our elementary school, and we've really built that. And it's, I mean, they just got recognized nationally. We've got to address the needs at the middle
So you're
school as
feeling like
well.
going down in 1 interventionist in the elementary school we can afford to do
Yes.
from a achievement perspective because of where
Something
we are
we're going
at.
to try and look at.
Yes.
And we're gonna try it.
I understand.
It's
What
a
you're saying.
it's a
very
fluid
closely.
situation, you know, fact of the matter is a lot of the students in the elementary school obviously graduate to the middle school. Well, interventionists have never graduated with them since we've put them into place over there. A couple were added due to COVID learning loss, and those students that were impacted by learning loss, again, are now coming to the middle school. But the idea, again, is 2 schools, 1 district. We're going to address all needs as best as possible, and we're going to rely on the data. And if the data proves successful, we're going to keep at it. If it doesn't, we're going to have to open doors for grants, alternative fundings. Where we have cost savings, we'll have to look to add someone mid-year. You know, the possibilities are endless. But right now, we have confidence in our staff, our leadership team, to be able to adjust from 5 to 4 interventionists. We get 2 at FMS, and then we kind of balance it out and address needs across the board, across the district.
And these are things, these conversations are great to see. We didn't see those 5 years ago. People are working together in the best interest of all of our students. I mean, they spend 5 years at the elementary school, and our people still care about them when they go to middle school. They're still our students, and we want what's best for them, and we've just got to work on building up that middle school right now.
Yes, we do.
So the next cut, again, was the school bus transportation. At the end of the day, we're surviving right now with the number of buses we have. We've talked about this in policy subcommittee, we've talked about this in budget subcommittee. You know, all we can do is work closer with our bus company to build efficiencies there on routes, on timing, on behavior, on rules, on, you know, write-ups. We can get in the classrooms and kind of teach on the education of how to behave on the bus. We can be more visible on the buses, and we think we'll see enough of an impact there where, again, we can get students to and from school safely as we are right now with the number of buses that we have.
So there's no, essentially, we're going to have the same level of service from a bus perspective that we had before, right?
Except I think we're going to be, what he was saying and what we had talked about was more strict guidelines. So if you are not behaving on the bus, then you are no longer taking the bus. End of story. And parents need to support that and help the teachers and our
And the consensus,
administration.
right, and the consensus was we wanted to keep, you know, transportation equitable and still allow to pick up the students that live closer in the district than the legally mandated distance. But at the end of the day, that falls on us. If we have the capacity on the buses, the rest, you know, we can improve on it with, you know, teaching behavioral skills and things like that.
You know, just speaking in favor of the administrative assistant, you've just been listening to Mr. McIntyre, what he has to do going forward and how much, like, look into the efficiency of the bus, spending his time in a lot of oversight issues. And he should not be bogged down in other issues. Now, take, for example, just doing a payroll. I would imagine, you know, with teachers, some are paid all the different steps, degrees, and all that has to be figured out. And it takes a great deal of expertise and time to do that. And I see many school districts I pick up, you know, that sometimes fall behind, and they get sanctioned by the Department of Education. I think City of Boston was because they couldn't keep up with the payment of their teachers. And it becomes a big issue. So you know, for even efficiency of operation, an additional administrative, you know, system makes it more, I think, our system more efficient. And looking into more grants, we're going to be having all sorts of, we have to keep on top of the grants that are coming that we're eligible for, and the complexities of applications and so forth. So I just think that for a better school system operated financially, I think that this position is needed.
Thank you, John. And then last but not least, the technology ask of a school-wide phone system. So again, you know, Mr. Missler spoke upon the technology department as a whole earlier in the evening, but what it came down to was we're utilizing grants as we speak. I have the phone system in a grant that we're waiting to see if we get approved by the end of March. We have capital asks through the town that we can utilize to be able to implement a part of the phone system or all of the phone system. And then E-rate plays a factor in it where, we're prioritizing infrastructure, but that leaves the door open for next year, a phone system or something similar to be discounted as much as, 60% for us, and make it a little more, affordable for our district. But they're,
Just to be clear, we're not doing the new phone system, because we have to do the new phone system, don't we?
so
I mean, it's not,
currently, again, it's in the plans one way or another. It's just how soon we're going to be able to address that. And unfortunately, that weighs on whether we get this grant funding, how our revenue numbers settle for the town to see if there's going to be available capital ask. If we can come up with a patch that holds us over and keeps us, compliant, let me just put it that way. Yeah, no, again, we're turning over every stone right now. I've had discussions with Mr. Missler about this issue, and we're confident that we'll be able to address it one way or the other.
We can be fined because we're not in compliance, but my understanding is if we show good faith efforts, that we're in the process of trying to get this, and yes, if it's not in the local budget, is it going to get done in July? No. It might be 6 to 12 months out, but if we can show good faith efforts that we are making progress towards getting that new phone system, I think, we'll be in good shape. Hopefully.
Again, this is a system that's existed. We haven't done anything to decrease the system's capacity or change what it does. It's the hand we were dealt, and, we uncovered the needs that need to be addressed, and we're going to work to improve that.
I think we're gonna get this, one way or another, we'll find a way to get it done. I mean, that's a priority that we have as a school committee, so, can we just say that if we can't get it one way or another, we'll find a way? Whether it be from somewhere, like the rentals or something like that?
Yeah, that's the angle.
That's
too.
our
So
fallback?
we can explore different options, there's fallback plans in place, but, we're taking it one step at a time. Again, right now, we're banking on a grant. If that doesn't come in, we're banking on some capital from the town. If that doesn't come in, we have use of facility funds that we could,
Squeeze, it'd be really tight.
Twist. will tell you
and I
it's a competitive
appreciate
grant.
I really appreciate all the reductions you guys are trying to make to meet the needs that we've been asked by the town, right? To reduce to a certain percentage on this budget. I just think, something like this, we shouldn't have to reduce so much when this is such an important.
Well, it was being reduced because we were told that there are other ways of getting it. So instead of putting it into this budget, there were like 3 other options.
Right, for
of
example,
getting
if we
it
can get half from a grant,
And
half from capital.
Right. If it falls through is all I'm
Right.
saying, then we're in a situation where we have a phone system that's not compliant.
Correct.
And we don't have it in our budget
for this year.
for this year.
And we can always go to fall meeting, right? There's also a fall meeting that we can think about as well. So there were just so many options, so that's why John and I, when we were discussing
I don't want to
this.
cement anything either, but, every year, we gain efficiencies. We go through the year and realize we didn't need a certain expense, because, for whatever reason, we have vacancies that open up money. We can come to school committee at that point in time if all of these avenues fail and lead to dead ends and say, hey, we have cost savings because we had XYZ vacancies in our salary lines, let's transfer the money to tech and let's get that phone system in. So there is play.
I think as long as the administration knows that it's the school committee's priority to get this
Absolutely.
done by next year.
I mean, yeah, we talk about it weekly and, what the status is and have we heard back from the grants and, what other options do we have, so.
I'm not at all doubting that your efforts. I just think it's just unfortunate that
It
we
is,
have
right.
to cut this much,
Did
right?
you say end of March that you
but
said? I'm sorry.
No.
Did you say the end of March that you thought you were expecting to hear back or hope to hear back on this?
Correct. And that was a safety and security grant where, capital technology was a strong piece of it, and you actually gained extra points on the grant evaluation for including, technology, so. But in summary, to get back on track here, this is what it boiled down to. Again, We're confident in the budget that we're presenting. We have resolutions and solutions to what we weren't able to build in. But this summarizes it, and this, again, is just working closely with the town and getting an idea of fiscal health for the town and other departments, but still getting what we need at the end of the day to impact our students in a positive way and provide those level services. So continuing on with the slides, again, in summary, why we needed a reading interventionist. We had data that supported that, and our students were either more than half or not meeting or partially meeting expectations. District admin assistant, again, it's just a share between all of central admin to take away, the clerical tasks, the minutia of day-to-day small tasks, and let us focus on the bigger pictures, forward thinking for the school district, and then cross-training, which is crucial, so that we do have a backup plan. We're talking about backup plans. We need a backup plan if something were to happen and we need to process payroll and pay our bills and address HR needs. And then last but not least, the middle school sports program, which again, major impact on social and emotional, student social and emotional support, mental health, and it even ties into academic needs. There's studies out there that say students that participate in athletics do better in the classroom.
And I can just say, I met with two groups of middle school students this week, focus groups, and they want more. They want more of this stuff. So it just costs money, and yeah, I would not want to see that cut.
Yeah.
No.
And then continuing on again, so just so you guys understand the revenue sources, a key factor in this presentation is that 99% of our asks are required to be funded by the state. We're not asking for too much more in additional funding. Compared to 6% last year, we're only at 1% this year, which was a 688% decrease.
Down that low.
No, it was definitely Dr. Daly and Patrick, Colin.
You did an incredible job, getting it down.
And the whole
so
leadership
low.
team did an amazing job.
To
It was a
have
true
1%
team effort.
increase, in these times with high costs and inflation and everything else.
Yeah, with inflation, everything's gone up
Yeah.
sky high. That's what I said, it's very tight budget,
It is.
but we're team players here.
And I think with the new position, with both Patricks and everybody working with this, it's like a new administration team. We were able to just trim even more things, be more efficient, and be able to do this. Because, in prior years, we would have never been able to do this.
Right, and honestly, we're already talking about cost savings in FY25 from what we're implementing now, for what we're gonna be able to
Right,
implement in '24, and reduce costs to, again, create opportunities to purchase what we need or pivot towards, higher priority items that necessarily wouldn't have gotten in the budget previously, but, that's because of the efficiencies that we're building and how much we're making our dollars stretch.
The new central office and all four principals really have made this made the difference. The chemistry between them is just fantastic, both academically and financially, I think. So that's just my
Thank you,
opinion.
and I will tell you, it's an honor for me to lead this group of administrators, because the way I see people coming together, and they're so focused all the time, it's everybody, they stick to that district strategy and the plan, and they really live that motto, 2 schools, 1 district. And you're gonna see that with this budget, this next school year, as we work together to figure this out, because as we've said, the needs have not changed from last month. The needs are still here, but we've gotten creative in the way we're going to operate.
Well done.
All right, and just to continue forward, a couple different ways to look at our overall budget, but again, the biggest takeaway is a 2.48% increase when compared to last year. I've shared a bunch of exhibits with you as well that kind of portray this number in different fashions, which we've already discussed. So unless there's any questions, I'm going to continue on through.
Did you have a question or comment now?
No.
No, Mr. Tev, sorry.
I have comments I can make. I didn't want to interrupt.
Okay, so overall, we're looking at a 2.48% increase, which I think is incredible in these times with all of our needs. And continuing, you know, we have to, in addition to that baseline, we've got to continue to move Acushnet forward. And there are many needs, as we've talked about, and our goal here is to continue to move in that forward direction. And I'm going to reiterate, we're comfortable, but it will be a tight budget.
You know, and as we conclude, again, just the timeline, here we are tonight, voting to adopt this as our operating budget. From here, we'll meet with a joint finance committee and Board of Selectmen meeting on 3/14. And then from there, it will go to spring annual town meeting in May.
I just have to reiterate again, I appreciate the hard work of Mrs. Gomes, Mr. Howcroft, obviously Mr. McIntyre, and our entire administrative team, and just people coming together to collaborate to help us get it to where we are right now. I want to thank everyone. You do have some handouts in your packet. There are additional exhibits that you have in your packet. And if you have any questions, and I just, you know, again, I want to encourage everyone to support us at town meeting. This is important. This is the future of our kids in Acushnet, and it's important that everyone gets involved. So I've always appreciated the support in this community, so thank you.
Again, that date of town meeting is Monday, May 22nd.
Madam Chairman, I can't say enough for those who really, you know, for those who support our schools and support education, that they attend that town meeting. We have a structure in town which is probably an open town meeting, and that means that anybody can come in, any registered voter can come in and vote. And that sometimes could be a negative thing and be a positive thing. That's why we need a core of people to support the budget coming to that town meeting. And not be sorry the day after, you know what I'm saying? So I just want to reiterate that how important that date is.
Thanks, Mr. Hawkins.
And thank you for recognizing all of the hard work. I mean, we've cut quite a bit since last month, and we're going to get creative. But I just hope it shows that we are team players in this town, and we want to work together with all of the other departments.
Yeah, we want to make sure that our because we're all tax-paying people here, are the most efficiently, you know, used.
So I have some comments on it, and I'm just, I'm a little bit torn because of all the work that went into the budget, but I'm just still having a tough time supporting the full-time employee ads. Because the district's always going to have needs, you fill those positions, there's still needs, we fill more, there's still needs, we fill more. And there's additional costs to the town in addition to the salaries. We fall into the category of healthcare, payroll costs, pension, which is a liability that's carried forward until throughout the lifetime. So I think there's a lot to consider. The amount of money that we're asking the town to contribute is a 6.35% increase. So that's not the Chapter 70. So you know, if we were to, if my real estate taxes were to go up at that rate, they double every 11 years. So I think, you know, it's something that, when looking at it, seems to be unsustainable when we're, from a demographic standpoint, not necessarily growing exponentially or growing the student body to the extent that we need to keep adding new human capital into the district. And that's where my disconnect comes, because then, you know, eventually it's going to come to a point where you're not necessarily cutting overhead expenses, or I mean, that's how we ended up without a library at one point, right? But now you're getting into a position where you're affecting people in their positions, like putting these positions into the budget. They generally stay there. they're usually not cut. So when I see something like an interventionist position, for example, due to a COVID learning gap, that to me sounds temporary, but it's probably something that's going to remain permanent. When I see administrative things that, positions that could be, delegated or outsourced, for example, salary payroll is pretty automated, for example. So those are the types of things that I'm considering when I'm considering this budget. And so, it's just hard for me to support it. I support 99% of it. But I'm not trying to be stubborn or anything like that, but I think it's something that it seems a little bit opportunistic in the budget due to, the demographics of high school attendance. I feel like that's short term. So for me, that's where I'm having a difficult time for the budget.
So I appreciate your feedback, certainly. I do just want to clarify one thing. What we are asking of the town, we're only asking 1% more than what is mandated by state. I understand the 6% you came up with, but 99% of that is out of our control.
Sure, right, so the 156 relative to what they're paying is about 2%. So it's the difference between 6.35% and say 4.35%, which is a more sustainable level, right, when exponentially considering year-over-year increases.
I wasn't really following.
So the town last year paid $8.355 million. We're now asking the town to pay, I think it's $8.886 million. That's a 6.35% increase. So if you were to take the 156, 828 over the 355, that's about 2%.
So comparatively, $9.2 million the town provided last year, which is the 8.3 plus the 844,000. In FY24, we're anticipating the town provide 8.88 million. So that's 9.2 compared to 8.9. Let's round up. So that's
Right. Most of that's from the high school tuition.
Most of that's from
Right.
Chapter 70 and
No. I'm saying most of that difference is
the cost savings. It's a factor.
Okay. Thank you. So but regardless, that's where I'm getting hung up on the budget.
And then just one more thing that I wanted to state, this leadership team and central office team, we've focused significantly on data and letting data decide and drive our decisions. So as you alluded to, interventionists added in the pandemic, temporary, potentially. If the data tells us that they need to exist, that's what we're looking at, and that's how we're making our decisions. Not to say that that won't go the other direction at some point where, our needs are addressed, interventionists aren't needing, no one wants to be here, standing here and cutting FTE. I agree with you with that. But if the data suggests it's not needed, that's going to be tough for me to stand up here too and say we need to support a position of someone that isn't really providing, strength.
How do you address the reading issues then without the interventionist?
So
Because the data's saying, right, it's not being addressed.
I'm not saying how to address that. I would think that if it's primarily a middle school issue, then we'd want to make sure that a higher percentage are moving across the parking lot. On closer to on level. I would imagine that's probably what Dr. Bailey was referring to. Hey, we've got them in a good position, so we're getting creative and figuring out how to move resources over here because that's where the need is, and I like that a whole heck of a lot better. In thinking about, okay, we're still keeping the same. Kind of, I'll say staff to student ratio, which I think is pretty good.
It is.
Yeah. But if we keep adding and adding it, I mean, theoretically, you could get to a 1-to-1 district. That's not talking about computers now, right? So,
Well, here's the thing with that,
Right.
John. I mean, this is my 9th year here, and there were so many cuts my first 3 years here. So many cuts. I mean, we got rid of the second person in HR or
The business
payroll-
office.
The business office. And the school just wasn't a priority in our town. And we had the funds. We weren't increasing taxes. We were just, in my opinion, the school committee was not advocating for our school. And they would give us, the finance committee would just give us a percentage. And the school committee and the budget subcommittee, we would just scramble and cut until we got to the number that they told us. And we're not doing that anymore. I mean, we are working together as a team, and I think that's what was the whole point of moving this school district forward. So, you know, you're saying we're gonna keep adding and adding and adding and adding, and I don't feel like that at all. I feel like we're catching up for all the damage that we've done in the past. And moving forward, we'll be as efficient as possible and you know, get this back to where it needs to be and work with the town, but still advocate for our kids and for our taxpayers at the same time.
I definitely feel strongly about positions that are going to be student-facing.
Aren't the interventionist students?
Way over other positions, for sure.
Like I
If
said-
that's what you're talking about.
So you agree that we should add, if it's needed, adding people such as the interventionist, if it's needed, that's okay, but the administrative assistant is something.
I believe that there's always going to be needs. I believe that there's always going to be shortfalls and needs, for sure. But I also think that it's critically important, I've said this before, is that it's critically important to get a good team here and retain a good team here. And I think that that's really, really important when you're looking at a finite amount of money that needs to get dispersed to an ever-increasing human capital population. So it becomes very difficult, especially when you've got contractual obligations and you know, to increase compensation on a go-forward basis. The way inflation's going, it's not going to get any easier, you know, right? So in the short term, for sure. And so I think that you know, future contract negotiations, what's that going to look like? You know, is it going to look like a you know, a 2.5? Probably not, right? So it's just it's a big. I think it's a big liability and a big responsibility going forward as a district as we add people, and that's just my opinion.
I just feel like we're catching up. We're just catching up from all the damage.
And I just want to add, like, with the pandemic, I do think it's going to take several years to address that. And I will say, you know, our kiddos get one chance at 3rd grade. They get one chance at 7th grade. We've got to do everything we can to make that year the best we can for them to succeed in their education. And, you know, when we're adding things, because we did have some adjustments, this is the hard work. In order for us to get that, we reduced so many things that we thought we could be more efficient and to add things to keep our district moving forward. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So we didn't want to keep the status quo because we know that wasn't working before. So we really, I mean, we went line by line, cut by cut, to see where we could land so that we can continue to move the district forward. But I hear everything that you're saying in terms of the cost, and I do think we have to keep an eye on that. But, you know.
Dr. Bailey, I was really excited to hear, like, I think Patrick had mentioned, hey, next year we're already looking at ways that we can reduce. And by the way, I think there's lots of those opportunities. I get excited when Mr. Missler's talking and you know, and saying, hey, you know, we're going to be able to save on these things. That's the stuff that you're going to be able to kind of reinvest into, you know, this district. The problem that I have with it is the FTEs and continuing to grow that, because it's so rigid and difficult when the state is not increasing what they're gonna give to us by much at all. So it's just, that's my issue with it.
But the state is increasing.
Very little.
Madam Chairman, I appreciate, I've been on both sides of the issue, and as you well know, in the past. You know, there are two gorillas in the room. One is the, you know, limits of 2.5, and the other one is the, you know, MCAS scores and how much that we have to adhere to, you know, show gains. So the taxpayers' money is being well spent, and that's why I support MCAS, for example. But we had I would have been taking the position had we had not had the new governor come in and had now projection and had increases in the budget, you know, in allocation down, you know, to Acushnet. Had we had not those type of increases, I would basically be, at least listening, more intently to your position. As you know, I didn't listen very well. We had, how much did we increase in the new budget?
From the state.
So originally, our forecast was the minimum increase, which was $30 per pupil, which amounted to about 70 grand. The state came out with Chapter 70 figures of 700,000. So that's 630,000 more than we anticipated. But to John's point, John Ted's point, it's a catch-22 because they're going to increase aid, they're going to increase the town's required contribution, and at the end of the day, whatever bucket it falls in, we're standing here saying these are our level services that we need, regardless of where the money came from. So, it's fortunate it worked out this year, and we're also in a better situation as far as our ESSER grants go, that we haven't, put ourselves in a predicament where we're funding millions of dollars of what should have been in local with these ESSER grants. We're using those to supplement our local aid, that when this fiscal cliff arrives, when the ESSER expires, we're not going to be, rolling up our sleeves, going to town asking for a ton more money because we've been, responsible with those funds. So again, there's always going to be many factors into it, but the point is, we're here, we're standing in front of you, we're telling you we're building efficiencies. We're telling you we're using data to drive our decisions. We're telling you we're turning over every stone to find grant funding, alternative funding, whatever it may be. But we're here, we're working together, and we're advocating for what we need, so.
Dr. Bailey, so the approach with the math interventionist would leverage somebody that's already at the elementary school was not, just to be clear, was not an option with the reading interventionist because we still have an unmet need at the elementary school, is that?
Well, no, because we're adding, in this new budget, we're adding, say, a reading interventionist, and then we're bringing another interventionist over, whether it's math, to equal 2 interventionists. So going from 0 to 2.
Meaning that we couldn't take 2 from the elementary
Right,
school.
we
couldn't-
couldn't.
Yeah, we're trying to balance things out. And, I'm all about equity and making sure all of our kids get what they need. And this is after conversations with our principals. We're all working together to give all of our kids the very best education that we can. And again, we're looking at the data. I probably every day have conversations with my central office team about accountability. I'm constantly asking for schedules, for caseloads. I want to see exactly what people are doing. And I go in and look. And if I don't see it, it's addressed. Because I realize it's the taxpayers' money. And it's something I take very seriously. I understand what this is. So, obviously I take my direction on the budget from this group, and my job has been to advocate and move the district forward. And I think with this budget, we will continue to move in a forward direction as we have been.
And to Dr. Bailey's support, unfortunately, a budget presentation consists of asks. What you guys don't see or did not see behind the scenes were the asks that made it to her desk and stopped at her desk because there wasn't data to support it, because, it wasn't something we identified as a need. So we stand here and we ask for things, but, Dr. Bailey and the leadership team, again, also collaborated with original asks that didn't even come to the surface because, again, we're challenging everything. We're looking at everything. We're looking at creative ways to address everything, ways to build efficiencies. So to Dr. Bailey's credit, I just wanted to give you that shout out.
Madam Chairman, we should have started this discussion with a recommendation made by, a motion made to accept the superintendent's, 2024 recommended budget, and then responded in the discussion to that motion. So we're it's going to be a parliamentary procedure. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
So I think maybe the time has come to make a motion, and I'd be glad to do it if the chair allows that motion to be made to accept the superintendent's 2024 recommended budget.
Okay.
Do you accept the
If I can request a motion, please, to accept the superintendent's proposed 2023-24 school department budget as proposed.
So moved.
In a second, I made a motion, you made a second.
motion and some second.
Right.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I think we
I
have
think
it.
we've had
And then we were
all those in favor?
Would you like me to take a roll call now?
Yes,
So Mrs. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Tevz,
No.
Mr. Hood,
Yes.
Mr. Howcroft,
yes.
Mrs. Downing,
Yes.
and the motion passes.
Thank you, that's all I have this evening.
Oh, I can get to my venison stew now.
Not quite yet.
Not yet, we
A little
still
bit more
have,
to go.
we still have a little bit more on the
I get
agenda.
to stand here a little bit longer.
Yeah, sure, it's disgusting.
You'll be brief though, right?
Yes, all right, so.
You need some levity.
I don't know if you have to introduce the business manager's report. Are we good to Carrie? All right, again, thank you for your time this evening. FY23 budget, imagine that. Spending's on track. There's 36% of our budget left remaining to be spent, including, with an additional 16% that's locked up in encumbrances right now. At the end of the day, what that boils down to is really salaries, tuitions, and contracted services. Our supplies and materials purchasing has long been completed, curriculum's been purchased, so the remainder are really just those big players, and I'm going to be working over the next few months to really boil down that number to see where we land in compared to our overall budget and see if there's any savings there. As I promised, I looked at the general ledger for budget transfers. At this time, there are none. We're staying pretty in line with our budget categories that we don't need to vote for any transfers, though I'm going to continue to look at that again monthly and bring it forward as needed. There's some GL cleanup to do, but, we're working on that internally and with the town accountants to handle that. Facilities, so again, we're getting hung up on the roof project with just material supply issue. We're waiting for the new louvers to be shipped over so that we can install them, but a certificate of substantial completion has been sent to us to be signed off on by the Board of Selectmen, and essentially we are waiting on our building inspector to give us a blessing to move forward with that, make sure his needs are addressed, and hopefully that'll wind down this spring. The solar project, so we had a presentation last meeting on that solar project as well, so at this point, we're going to move forward and present to the Board of Selectmen to get their support, and as Mr. Giles communicated at our previous meeting, potentially sign a letter of intent so that we can, continue to move forward with brainstorming the project, dial in the numbers, what kind of savings that we can have before we sign any contracts, and commit ourselves to anything. Surplus, so, at the beginning of the year, I guess, or the start of all this, we surplused almost every meeting. The school committee suggested that we don't just toss our surplus. We try to find a resourceful way to recycle it, I guess, for lack of a better term. So we actually held our surplus event during February vacation, where we offered every item for $1. We were able to recycle, 56 items back out into the community. So to me, that's a win, because that's 56 things that, didn't go to waste or go out in the trash, and our community gets to take advantage of that. And shout out to our maintenance and facility crew, our maintenance and custodial crew who really spearheaded that project, made sure, the heavy tables and desks and everything got into our community members' vehicles, and just made sure it was a safe process. So thank you to them. Food service, so again, continues to be an ongoing discussion with us. I provided the number count, but long story short, Shelley continues to utilize every resource she has to improve our program. She's been in talks with Rob Leshin, the director of the DESE Office for Food and Nutrition Programs, as well as Denise Courtney, the DESE Nutrition Education and School Wellness Training Coordinator. What they've communicated is, unfortunately, they can't physically come to a meeting to speak on any of the nutritional program guidelines. But if we had any specific questions that we wanted to send them, we could formulate, a summary of those questions, send it to them, and get those directly answered by them. But more importantly, again, Shelley and I continue to work to evaluate the program. We've talked about how they're going to introduce a new reduction on sugars and limits that way. And we're already evaluating what menu items that we have now would fit into those guidelines. And again, we just continue to evaluate. So we're excited for potentially June, July, or August school committee meeting to kind of paint the picture of all the changes that we've made based on discussions with this team, and then goals that we're going to set for FY24 to continue to improve. And then in FY24, we'll take it month by month and presenting on goals that we were able to address or succeed in. And that about wraps it up. So I appreciate it.
Do we have any school committee member reports to share this evening?
I just want to share that, this May 22nd meeting at 7 p.m. in our Ford Middle School cafeteria is extremely important. And I completely understand that so many parents are on the baseball field or on the softball field, because that's baseball, softball time. But it is super important to maybe carpool, have your kids carpool to that practice or that game and come to this meeting. And I can't say that enough, because the next day afterwards, if we don't get what we really need, it's going to affect every student in this district. So please attend and find any way of getting there.
All right. There are, per usual, some communications noted in your packet that you can read at your leisure. We have no executive session this evening, so I'll just remind the public that our next school committee meeting is in April here at the John DeVars Library on the 4th, so that's Tuesday the 4th, 5:30 p.m. And if I could request a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.